Don't send you to sleep like some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Oh, the system's broken again today. So there's Ellie. Ellie's at Henley Regatta, and looking exquisite in orange there today. So Ellie, is it going to rain, or what's the weather going to be like?
I hope not. Rain is forecast a little bit later on. That's not going to bother the rowers too much because they are used to water. But wind could be a problem, and the wind is picking up today, let me tell you. But let me show you the scenes at Henley Regatta. It is the most prestigious royal regatta in the world. It runs until Sunday here in Henley-on-Thames, this beautiful town on the River Thames. You can see these gorgeous riverside homes here. They've got a fantastic view of the regatta for the next few days. You can see there's a Canadian flag over there and a Union Jack flag as well. So there are people who've come from all over the world to watch the fantastic rowers. And of course, there are teams from all over the world that are here as well. I'm going to show you this boat that's just about to take off to head off to the starting line. This is the University of London women's team. You can see them there in their boat just about to head off. They're awaiting instruction from their cocks, and they just came out of the tent there to a huge round of applause. So people really, really excited to see those ladies off, and you can perhaps hear the cheers and the applause for a team that are just heading out. I can't quite see the name on their boat, but they're just heading out as well. But you know, at GB News, we love an underdog, don't we? We love the story of an underdog. So I have to tell you about a team that is just about to, what's the time now? It is 22 minutes past. They must be rowing as we speak. Llandaff Rowing Club from Wales. They have just set off from the start line. They have only just made it into the competition. They've made it through under new rules, but they are against Brisbane Boys College, who have come all the way from Australia to Henley-on-Thames today. They are the favourites out of the whole regatta, Brisbane Boys College. So hopefully Llandaff, the small Welsh club, does really, really well. And if they beat Brisbane Boys Club, which could happen because they've got the crowd support here, that would just be the most fantastic story, because I know that we love the story of an underdog, don't we, at GB News. But I do also just need to bring you some of the fashion as well, because let's be real, that's what I'm here for. It's all about striped blazers, funky blazers. I'll try and capture some for you. You can see one here, this gentleman in the ivory blazer with that lovely edging there, striped edging, and there's a lovely striped one down there as well. And boater hats, that's what it's all about here at Henley. I've just got the train here from London, and it was a sea of striped blazers and boaters, and there's some fantastic floral dresses as well. 2 years ago, the dress code for Henley became quite casual. They said women are allowed to wear trousers for the first time, but looking around, not many women have actually taken us up on that. Most women do want to dress up. They want to enjoy the day. So I think it's going to be lots of fantastic fashion today, lots of wonderful eccentric blazers plenty of drinking, and of course, world-class rowing as well.
It's quite posh, isn't it?
Well,
Frankly.
which some of that fantastic fashion belongs to you, we have to say, Ellie.
Oh, thank you.
Well, that's very good.
Oh, thank you very much. I haven't got my heels on yet, and you'll be glad to know I've packed a blazer, but not a very funky one. I wish I'd gone a bit more out there now.
No, leave that to the boys, and you just wear a funky dress. And Ellie, before we let you go, we have to say congratulations for your part in the TRIC Award. It was wonderful to share the stage with you. We're all really pleased. How are you feeling about it all?
Oh, I feel really, really amazing this morning. I hope you guys do too. You're an award-winning breakfast team, and it does feel really amazing. It feels like a privilege to be a very small part of such a talented, amazing team. And it feels really good for it to be a public vote. So, you know, that's what matters, that the public seems to really like what we do, and we were up against really stiff competition, and it's us that picked up that gong, so it feels special.
Absolutely.
The picture you're looking at was snatched after celebrations in the bar at the Grosvenor
Champagne or
House
two
Hotel.
down.
Yeah, so not everybody's there. Stephen's not there, for instance.
Stephen slipped away. I tagged him in the picture, though, nevertheless.
So that was us just trying to get the group together and pat each other on the back. But, you know, most of all, folks, you watching and listening at home, you're the ones who made it all possible, and we really appreciate that. So thank you very much indeed. Ellie, have a good day. Hope the sun comes out for you.
Enjoy yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hottest day of my life, I can remember, was at Henley Regatta.
Well, at least you're by the water. Nice, cool breeze. If it's good to be anywhere, it's by water when it's hot.
Well, it was hot. It was very unpleasantly hot. But I think it's because it was working. You're right, you couldn't really stop and whatever. But there we go. That's it from us today. We will be back on the award-winning GB Breakfast News from 6 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for voting. Up next, it's Bev and Andrew with Britain's Newsroom.
What a privilege to follow those award-winning breakfast show hosts, Eamon and Isabel. Really great treat. We're talking about the water industry. Your bills are going to soar, I'm afraid, because that's the cost of cleaning up our rivers. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt's got regulators in today and he's reading the right at them. Why is it wholesale prices fall fast, but the prices to us don't fall as fast?
That's right. We've been talking about that, haven't we? Price gouging. Companies taking advantage of the fact that you think the prices might be higher in the shops, and so they put them up a little bit. But will Jeremy Hunt do anything? Will you have any faith that anything will change? We're going to have two of our favourite panellists here as well, Stephen Pound and Emma Webb. We're going to be going through some of the stories in the papers, and of course the conclusion yesterday of the inquest into the death of Nicola Bulley. We're going to be looking at that as well.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in their home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Morning, it's 9:30 on Wednesday, June the 28th. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
A lot to get through this morning. The worst disruption in NHS history. Senior doctors across the country have voted to join junior doctors and nurses in their chaotic 5-day strike next month.
Water woe, prices look set to spike, could be as much as 40%. A boss of one of the big company quits. Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, is meeting with regulators across all the industries to talk about the cost of living crisis.
And more mortgage mayhem on the way as Britons are having to shave 5% off their house prices to achieve a sale. Is this starting to impact you? Send us your thoughts.
And that disgraced former Hollywood actor, Kevin Spacey, he's in court today charged with 11 counts of sexual assault against 4 men between 2001 and 2008. We'll be there.
And we're gloating a little here on GB News this morning. It's an extra special morning for us because we had 2 big wins yesterday at the Television and Radio Industries Club Awards.
Nigel Farage has been awarded Best News Presenter and our breakfast show claimed the multi-channel news programme Gong. Congratulations to them both.
That's right. As always, let us know your thoughts this morning. Even if it's just to say well done GB News, gbviews@gbnews.com is the email address. First of all, here is your latest news with Tamsin Roberts.
Bev, thank you and good morning from the GB Newsroom. It's 9:32. The Chancellor will question consumer watchdogs today over concerns firms are exploiting high inflation to boost their profits. Jeremy Hunt will meet with the Competition and Markets Authority and the regulators for the energy, water and communication sectors to press them to help keep prices down. The meetings come after the Bank of England suggested some retailers are hiking prices or failing to pass on lower costs to consumers. The government is reportedly drawing up contingency plans for the emergency nationalisation of Thames Water. It's after it's feared the company is £14 billion in debt. Ministers are said to be in talks about bringing the company into public hands under a so-called special administration regime. The discussions are understood to be at a very early stage and the plans may not need to be put in place. The Labour Party says it will prioritise making difficult choices on building more homes. The Shadow Housing Secretary, Lisa Nandy, will use a speech today to outline Labour's plans to involve reinstating the target of building 300,000 houses annually. She's also expected to pledge to rebalance power in favour of those aspiring to own their own homes. The government says low-earning parents on universal credit will receive a boost in childcare support. The new limits are £951 per month for one child and £1,630 for 2 or more children. Eligible parents entering work or increasing their hours will also receive up to 85% of their childcare costs back in advance, making it easier for them to manage upfront bills. Well, you can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Well, it's being billed as the worst disruption in the history of the NHS next month after senior medics, consultants, some of whom are earning £128,000 a year, voted to strike in the ongoing dispute over pay.
Members of the BMA, the British Medical Association, voted in favour of strikes on the 20th and the 21st of July unless a credible offer is made.
Meanwhile, the government's children's minister, Claire Coutinho, says she hopes the striking doctors would get in line with the other unions, 14 of them, 15 now actually, with the RCN, that have already accepted pay deals.
Well, I'm glad to say that 6 out of the 7 health unions have now accepted their pay offers. I saw yesterday that the nurses have decided not to strike again, and they've accepted the increases that we've put in place. And I hope the others follow suit. I think it's really important that patients are getting the healthcare that they need. We know that this is a time of waiting lists. We know that there are people who need to get their appointments and their surgeries, and I hope that they could also follow suit with the other major health unions. Like I said, 6 out of 7 have now agreed with us and accepted the offer.
That's the junior minister, Claire Coutinho. Joining us in the studio for more analysis, our deputy political editor, Tom Harwood. Tom, it should have been good news because the Royal College of Nursing have called off that strike action. Only 43% of their members bothered to vote, which shows how...
And not all of them voted for strike action?
No, and it seem to show you how out of love nurses have fallen with that union, because I think it's misread the mood.
It seems to have, but of course it seemed to misread the mood before as well, when other unions voted to accept the pay offer. The RCN was sort of this holdout, this outlier, and so it did seem likely that even though they were pushing to ballot for more and more strikes, just because all of their colleagues in other unions weren't doing it, I think the government felt fairly confident that that ballot would not achieve what it set out to do, whether that be through not reaching its threshold or whether that be through being rejected outright. In the end, it was the former.
But now we've got the consultants, most of them earning over £100,000.
The average consultant earns £126,000.
That's what I thought.
One of the complaints of the consultants is actually that our tax burden has risen fairly considerably, and because the thresholds for tax have frozen, they're paying more tax than they were. The real terms way that the top bands kick in means that lots of consultants are now paying a lot of tax, some, of course, paying 45% now, which, of course, has been lowered. The threshold for paying 45% was lowered by the Chancellor.
Of course, one of the problems is what these people, highly qualified, can be paid overseas. So I was listening to one consultant this morning in the media talking and saying that if he went to work in Dubai, his annual salary would be the equivalent of £400,000 tax-free.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Australia, £250,000 and less tax. So how do we, and this global market, how on earth do we compete?
It's a really horrific balancing act, and I think there is a strong argument to say that the NHS has got the balance wrong in the past.
Yeah.
The argument, however, is different in the context of near double-digit inflation.
That's right.
Because the government is so very worried about a wage price spiral, and there is some evidence to see that actually our very sticky inflation numbers this month might well have been exacerbated by particularly high earners getting big pay rises. That is people on 6-figure salaries. That is NHS consultants. If there is an inflation matching pay rise, the government expects then inflation will stay at that level.
Of course.
And of course, you've got the junior doctors going on strike too. Junior doctors, of course, is not quite what it seems on the tin, because many of them are just one rank below consultant or qualified GP. So some of them are earning £90,000. They're going on strike again for 5 days.
5 days. So the consultant strike is 2 days.
Yeah.
The junior doctor's strike is 5 days, but they run into each other.
Funny that.
So it makes a week of disruption, really, for people trying to access these services. I suppose what the unions behind these strikes are thinking is they will make this felt and make the
They'd
government
argue
squirm.
otherwise, what's the point of going on strike if you don't cause maximum impact?
Absolutely.
Even if it is at the expense of our health.
I was just thinking about what Professor Carol Sikora was saying to us earlier in the week, because he's saying, I'm so concerned about these backlogs, but I think we could eat into these backlogs if we were making people work through the night and extending hours. And yet that mindset, that attitude towards wanting to bring down the waiting list doesn't correlate. It's actually at odds with what these doctors and junior doctors are trying to achieve.
But if you could move out to Bondi Beach and be on twice the money, why would you work through the night? I mean, it is such a difficult balancing act. And again, this goes back to the situation that there are no easy answers here. We don't want to embed inflation. We don't want our inflation to be sticking at this level for months and months and months to come. But also, we don't want to see people leaving this service. And so that's a really difficult situation. It's almost as if the government should sort of look to talking about a future pay settlement after the inflation situation has been dealt with, rather than talking about inflation matching, or, as the junior doctors want, inflation busting several times over. They're looking for a 35% pay rise.
It's outrageous. They should be ashamed of themselves. And then you get Labour's Wes Streeting, one of their most clever, skillful media performers. He's the Shadow Health Secretary, condemning everything the government's doing. Labour aren't going to give these pay rises. They've made that absolutely clear. It's unaffordable.
The Labour Party has played a very clever game because they haven't said what they would commit to. They say that the government is being parsimonious and is treating these public sector heroes poorly. But again, the Labour Party won't say what they would do differently in power. And judging by the comments of Rachel Reeves, who over the last few days has been saying that the government needs to be very careful about how much it borrows, because that obviously contributes to pumping money into the economy and inflating all the prices. How would she perform differently with regard to demands for 35% pay rises? It's very hard to see how there's actually much policy difference, even though there's a lot of rhetoric difference, policy difference between the two major parties.
And they're all trooping into number 11 today, I think.
All of the offs.
All the off.
Ofcom, off what? Off with their head? No, I don't know what's going on.
I can think of a phrase that ends in off that I'd like to say to most of them.
But this is all about trying to ensure that there is the right level of regulation for companies where there has been accusations of price gouging, there have been accusations of profiteering. The Chancellor is getting in all of these off-heads into number 11 to try and, I suppose,
and do what,
ensure.
though? And do what? This is surely...
Get some good headlines, perhaps?
Just a piece of theatre for us, isn't it? I'd love to... You know what? Put a camera in that room. If this is genuinely a committee meeting in the public interest, let us see what you're talking about.
Also, what can the water regulator do in a regulated market where there's no competition? There is no competition. I live in the Thames water. That's where my water comes from. I have no choice, and yet it's supposedly privatised. So what can they... We're now hearing, Tom, that Thames Water has debts of £14 billion. They gave shareholders £2 billion last year.
And the commitments that they are now going to make with regard to... the infrastructure that is needed to make sure that sewage overflows and all the rest of it do not continue to muddy our waters, the $2 billion there that you're talking about, the $14 billion in debt, that pales in comparison to the amount that they will need to be spending on modernising Victorian infrastructure. And so there are reports now, particularly in the Times, which I see
on
you've
the
got
front page,
before you, 40% price rises may well be the cost of this new infrastructure. But it's a choice. Do we want to have sewage overflows from our Victorian infrastructure, or do we want 21st century infrastructure? But that's not free. Someone has to pay for it.
And we also want to stop these wretched leaks because we've got hosepipe bans in two parts of the country now where water companies are losing every day a third of their supply.
Although I don't think we can always cast the water companies as the villain in the piece when it comes to the hosepipe bans. The water companies have been trying to build reservoirs.
Yes, that's very true.
Good point.
The water companies have been trying to build reservoirs, particularly in the southeast of England, that's seen huge population growth in the last 30, 40 years. Do you know how many reservoirs have been built in the southeast of England in the last 30, 40 years? Zero. Not since the 1970s have we built a reservoir, not because the water companies don't want to build. They've been trying to build these things, but local politicians have been stopping them.
Often the Lib Dems, by the way, often the Lib Dems.
Famously, the Abingdon Reservoir is one that really there's been attempting to be built for 20-odd years. And the local MP is the Lib Dem Layla Moran, and she's been campaigning very hard against it. And then she complains that there's a hosepipe ban.
I don't understand the logic behind the reservoir thing at all. Reservoirs are actually quite beautiful. I was in one in Wales a couple of weekends ago. They were boating, there was paddleboarding on it, there's lovely areas for exercise, all this talk of wellness, health, mental health. Reservoirs aren't just... They're good for the community. And they're good for our water supply.
There is no coincidence that every major settlement throughout history has grown up around a river or on a coastline. London, Paris, New York. You only have to look at the sort of human quality of people and water. I was in Calais over the weekend, and did you know that the...
Holiday or work?
Holiday. Very brief weekend away. Well, it's very quick to get to. Did you know that the soil that they took out from the Channel Tunnel, well, they had to put it somewhere. They dumped it in and around Calais and built a reservoir because they built up all of the soil.
Why didn't they dump the soil in Kent and build the reservoir in Kent?
We had half the soil. We made a nature reserve.
Well, it's classic.
Well,
it's nice, but less practical.
Yeah, less practical. Calais, of course, used to be British soil under the Dutch.
It did.
First.
It did. So I went to the site of the Golden... what was it called? It's where now I'm getting my 100 years war history rattled.
The Golden
No. There was I think it was when Henry VIII went over and had this sort of several days of banqueting to try and sort of make amends and play nice with the French king, and then there was a famous joust where I think Henry VIII got knocked off his horse, and it all ended in a disaster. This whole expensive celebration that was meant to bring these two countries together ended up in a feud.
Very good.
It's still going on, isn't it?
I just go for a booze cruise, to be honest.
Tom, thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Tom.
Now, coming up in the programme, we're going to be talking about the government's climate change. What is it called? Zero fracture.
It's all a load of word salad, isn't it? Net zero, climate emergency, eco-zealotry. Well, the government's climate advisors say that the ministers are ignoring recommendations and failing to meet net zero targets.
So this is the Climate Change Committee chaired by John Gummer, who used to be a Tory Environment Minister, which says the action on pledge to reduce emissions by 70% by 2030 is worryingly slow. The government says, however, it's cutting emissions faster than any other G7 country. Who's right?
That's right. So joining us now for more is the Senior Lecturer in Natural Sciences at Bangor University, Dr Christian Dunn. Good morning, Christian. Nice to talk to you again. The government are very proud of the fact that they say we're cutting emissions faster than any G7 country. Is that also why we have the worst economy than any other G7 country?
Well, the two aren't completely linked. However, if we don't get control of our emissions, if we don't get control of climate change, then our economy will suffer in the long term. So we have to sort out getting to this net zero, whenever that may be. You know, this report says there's no chance of us getting it to by 2030. So we have to look again at that. We have to either ramp up actions or we have to look again at our kind of targets that we've set ourselves. But if we don't do that, the consequences could be catastrophic, not just for things like farming and agriculture, but also for economy as well. So the two are linked, but in this case, we need to kind of make sure that we are bringing the two together in a sustainable and a pragmatic way. And I think that kind of pragmatic way may have been missed at certain points.
Christian, I hear that, but a lot of people watching this programme and listening will be thinking, I'm struggling to pay my bills, I'm worried about my mortgage, and yet I'm paying hundreds of pounds every year in green taxes on my gas and electricity. I'm afraid if I was Chancellor of the Exchequer, I'd be stripping those out of our gas and energy bills just for a couple of years to help during the cost of living crisis. Because, to be honest, our little bit towards global warming makes very little difference when you've got China, Brazil and India pumping all that stuff into the atmosphere, and they're doing very little to curb it.
Yes, I can understand people's frustration with that. Not being an economic sort of expert at all, or a political expert, then I can kind of give that to the politicians and the economists to argue with. When I'm looking at this as a natural scientist, which is what I am, then I have to stress that we must be doing more, and we have to be doing it quicker. And this argument that, oh, it's not really affecting us in the UK, why should we care about it? That may be the case, okay? It might not be affecting your day-to-day life, the fact that the climate is increasing. It actually is, but if you look at it, but you might think it's not. But if you go to somewhere like the Mekong Delta, where people's livelihoods are being completely destroyed because of climate change, they're seeing the effects right now. So as a developed, as a relatively wealthy country, I think that we should be trying to do our bit. And the argument that other countries aren't doing enough doesn't really stack up. I mean, the issue is that we should be doing something about it.
Christian, shock me to the core and tell me what you would do in an ideal world if you could to get us to that net zero target by 2030. What would we have to do?
I think the first thing is we have to look at the energy that we have. Renewables, yes, but we have to be looking at nuclear as well. We have to be looking at massive investments in that. And we have to be looking at this as a holistic issue as well, not just kind of having a department to look at this in net zero, which the government has. This has to be across everything that we do. But you're totally right. We have to be doing this in a pragmatic way, and we have to be doing it in a way that understands that people are struggling to pay their bills. So how do we support that? That is a question for politics, and this is the problem when it comes to addressing such a big issue, is that politics is on a 5-year timescale. This has to be looked at in a much longer timescale than that.
Christian, I mean, one of the things that one of the biggest producers, in fact, the biggest producer of carbon emissions in the UK in terms of industries is actually the construction industry. Making concrete, building houses is actually bad for the environment. And in fact, one of the things that the CCC report has said, this snappy soundbite intent of installing 600,000 heat pumps, it sounds impressive, but the detail on delivery and progress remains lacking. Isn't it a case, especially when we're looking for more houses, that every single house that's being built should be insulated as such and provided with solar panels, whatever it is, air source heat pumps, because they don't work retrospectively fitted on houses. It's a nonsense to think we can put them on an old 1920s semi and they're going to keep your house warm. The building industry, and particularly the government's relationship to buildings, needs to change, and we need to be making that sort of effort, don't we, in terms of housing?
100%. This is what I say. We have to be looking at this holistically. I mean, you were just talking just then as well about water. Well, if we had our development, our new buildings, our new houses built correctly, we could be helping with that water issue as well. We could be using our new houses to harvest rainwater. We could be using our new houses that we use grey water for flushing our loos, for example, which would take an awful lot of the pressure off our water issues. We should be looking at incorporating sustainable development, sustainable drainage systems in our new developments as well, which could again reduce the pressures on our water industry. So we have to be looking at this holistically, and to say, oh, it's too expensive, we can't be doing this. If we don't do it, then the problems are going to stack up, like the water issue, for example. Our bills are looking like they might be going up 40% because the water industry, yes, it's not done its job properly, but as well as a society, we've not got a grip on future-proofing our development, our buildings, our infrastructure, the way our country runs for a changing climate. And that is the issue. Our climate is changing. We've got rid of our wetlands. 75% of our wetlands have been destroyed since 1700. These are fantastic managers of our water. So when we're now looking at our water shortages, well, a reason for that is because we've got rid of loads of our fens and our marshes, which held on to that water during the wetter months and then released it slowly during the dry months. We have to be looking at this societally.
Thank you, Dr. Christian Dunn. Brilliantly explained. I like the idea that people can create their own energy in their houses so that they're not having to pay some big foreign-owned company to turn the cooker on.
But I tell you, the chairman of that Climate Change Committee will have lost the room because he says organisations like Just Stop Oil need to make even more a nuisance of themselves to make their case.
Right, GB News won big yesterday at the TRIC Awards. 2 in 2 for the People's Channel. Our breakfast show was voted the best multi-channel news programme.
And our very own Nigel Farage took the prize for News Presenter of the Year, and that really upset some of the people in the audience.
Right, let's speak to award winner Stephen Dixon. You will, of course, know Stephen from GB News Breakfast at the Weekend. Congratulations, Stephen. Did you party long into the night?
No, I didn't. I went out for dinner. Very, very nice and quietly, because you've got to not be too gloaty about these things. But what an incredible achievement for a channel that's just 2 years old and a program that's only 18 months old. So we're just so pleased and so grateful to everyone who voted for us in this category.
And isn't the key to this award, Stephen? I was there yesterday, and it's the fact that it's voted for by the British public from start to finish. And that room yesterday, which is full of a lot of industry types, Channel 4, BBC, Sky News, they didn't like it. They didn't like the fact that the British public have voted for us.
No, I don't think they do, really. I think it's all a bit of a shocker, isn't it? I mean, previously, I think I'm right in saying the TRIC Awards was 60% public vote, 40% the sort of board, if you like, making the final call. And this year it was different.
Yeah,
but isn't this how it should be? Yeah. Isn't this how it should be, that the British people are saying what they like? And that's what matters. They're the people who are watching. They're the people who are tuning in. They're the people we do this for. And if they like what we're doing, well, that's got to be good. But no, for the rest of the industry, I think they're going to have to change their game a little.
And Stephen, why do you think it is that GB News Breakfast won? Because it is really the Blue Ribbon Award, I would argue. What are you doing differently to the rest?
I think we're listening to people as much as anything else, Andrew, to be perfectly honest. One of the key things we do, certainly on a Friday, Saturday and Sunday, are GB Views. And we don't just have a few, we have thousands of them come through every day, and we reflect them. And I often say, when we're going through views, well, this is what Pat says in Lincolnshire. I don't know that I would agree with that. Excuse me. But the whole issue with this is that we're reflecting views that we may not agree with, but they're legitimate views to hold, and that's what we're doing. It's about having a conversation, isn't it? And it's about being part of a family, a big family across the country, who are having a conversation, disagreeing but doing it nicely.
This channel took a lot of stick when it first launched, Stephen, 2 years ago. I wasn't here then. You were here. Were you here on day one? You weren't here either. And actually, I feel, I don't know about you, Stephen, but the mood has very much changed now. When we walk down the street, people are happy to say hello and thank you for what you do on GB News. They feel this channel in their hearts, don't they?
Yeah, well, and it's a big difference, actually. I mean, I was on Sky News for 22 years, and people would maybe look and point and occasionally say hello. Now, I get stopped every single day by people who want to come up. They don't want just to say hello, they want to have a conversation. And that is magical, because it means people feel like they know you. You are part of their family and their everyday, and they want to have a conversation. And that is the best thing about this job, and it's why it's so worth doing.
Well done, Steve. Well, congratulations,
Well
Stephen.
done.
Richly deserved. Presenting with Ellie and, of course, the legendary Anne Diamond, of course, too.
Absolutely.
And Eamon
Must
and
give
Isabel,
credit to Anne.
Monday to Thursday, too.
Yeah, Anne had time off, obviously, with being unwell, and Ellie has held that seat beautifully. Anne and Stephen will be back, of course, on Friday morning.
They certainly will.
Yeah. Now,
coming up, we're going to be looking to the worst disruption in NHS history. It's going to take place next month, just when the nurses have settled their dispute. The highly paid consultants' average pay £126,000 for going on strike for 2 days, following 5 days of strikes by the junior doctors who want 35% in their dreams.
yeah, so don't go anywhere. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News, the People's Channel. First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive, because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's News Channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions, and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio, and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on Wednesday, the 28th of June. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Bev Turner, and Andrew Pearce.
Well, it's being billed as the worst disruption in the history of the NHS. Consultants, average pay £126,000, have voted to join junior doctors who are seeking a 35% pay rise in effectively 7 days of strikes next month, just as the nurses have settled.
And more mortgage chaos on the way as well. Britons are having to shave 5% off their house prices to achieve a sale. This is according to Zoopla. Is this impacting you? We're going to be looking at this in a little more detail.
And he's always called disgrace, isn't he? Former Hollywood actor Kevin Spacey in court today charged with 11 counts of sexual assault against 4 men between 2001 and 2008. We'll be there.
Thank you for joining us. And as we've been saying, we are feeling a little bit pleased here at GB News this morning. The channel won 2 prestigious awards yesterday at the Television and Radio Industries Club.
So Nigel Farage, he's been awarded Best News Presenter, and our breakfast show claimed the multi-channel news programme Gong.
And thank you, because it is voted for by the public. So thank you to all of you from everybody here at the channel. Let us know your thoughts this morning. Get in touch with us. gbviews@gbnews.com is the email address as always. But first of all, here is your latest news with Tamsin Roberts.
Bev, thanks very much and good morning from the GB Newsroom. It's 2 minutes past 10. The Chancellor has pressed consumer watchdogs over concerns that firms are exploiting high inflation to boost their profits. Jeremy Hunt met with the Competition and Markets Authority and the regulators for the energy, water and communications sectors to question them on what powers they can use to help lower prices for customers. The meeting comes after the Bank of England suggested some retailers are hiking prices or failing to pass on lower costs to consumers. A formal complaint of groping has been submitted against the Conservative candidate for London Mayor, Daniel Korski. TV producer Daisy Goodwin is accusing the former Downing Street aide of groping her a decade ago. Mr Korski denies the allegation, saying it's categorically untrue, and has pledged to stay in the race to become the Conservative candidate for London Mayor. A number of Tory MP backers of Mr Korski have paused support for his campaign in the wake of the allegation. Climate advisers say they're worried about the government's transparency and slow progress in achieving net zero targets. The Climate Change Committee says the scale-up action on the pledge to reduce emissions by 68% by 2030 is worryingly slow. The government says the UK is cutting emissions faster than any other G7 country. The government is reportedly drawing up contingency plans for the emergency nationalisation of Thames Water. It's after it's feared the company is £14 billion in debt. Ministers are said to be in talks about bringing the company into public hands under a so-called special administration regime. The discussions are understood to be at a very early stage, and the plans may not need to be put in place. Assistant editor of The Spectator, Cindy Yu, told GB News where the problem lies.
I think 10 years ago it was taken over by an Australian investment fund, which basically has been running it like a business, but not a business that has any competition in that area. And that, I think, is a fundamental problem. When you privatise utilities companies which don't have any competition locally, they're not trying to drive down prices because they don't have anyone to compete with. And so whatever they do is down to the regulators like Ofwat to make sure that it's all OK. And clearly Ofwat hasn't had enough teeth or hasn't had enough motivation or whatever it is.
Around 4 in 10 house sellers are having to shave more than 5% off the original asking price to achieve a sale. It's after the central bank raised interest rates last week, piling pressure on mortgage holders. Property website Zoopla says the number of homeowners dropping their price in June is the highest it's recorded since 2018. The government says low-earning parents on universal credit will receive a boost in childcare support. Families can now receive up to £951 per month for one child and £1,630 for 2 or more children. Eligible parents entering work or increasing their hours will also receive up to 85% of their childcare costs back in advance, making it easier for them to manage upfront bills. Minister for Children, Claire Cantinho, says the plans will allow parents to access affordable childcare.
This is something which we know has been a real challenge for families. It's part of our wider plans. Like I said, we're making the single largest ever investment into childcare. We recognise it's really important for families. It helps parents get back to work. It helps with family finances as well. And today is the first step in that.
Oscar-winning actor Kevin Spacey is set to face trial over alleged sex offences against 4 men. The charges include sexual assault, indecent assault and causing a person to engage in sexual activity without consent. The 63-year-old is due to appear in person at Southwark Crown Court for the 4-week trial. He denies all accusations. Boots will close 300 of its stores across Britain over the next year, despite posting stronger sales over the last quarter. The move will reduce the number of its sites to 1,900. The retail giant says staff will not be affected by the closures, with plans to redeploy affected workers. A spokesperson says it's to allow Boots to concentrate its team members where they're needed and to focus investment more acutely in individual stores. Human remains found in the Californian mountains are confirmed to be those of Julian Sands. The British actor had been missing for more than 5 months after disappearing on a hike in the Mount Baldy area. Local police confirmed his remains were found on Saturday by hikers, with the coroner later confirming them to be those of Mr. Sands. He was best known for his breakout role in the 1985 romantic period drama A Room with a View, in which he starred alongside Helena Bonham Carter. This is GB News. More from me shortly. Now, though, it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Well, lots of news and views pouring in, as ever, of course. People are very exercised, of course, by the fact consultants are going on strike. Average salary, $126,000. They say their pay has fallen back. And, of course, a lot of them have been dragged into higher tax brackets, as has been so many. But Graham says, are they really being unreasonable when you consider that NHS pays diversity and equality staff £70,000 per annum, and train drives in London Underground can earn up to, I think that's with their pension, of course, and overtime, £100,000 per annum.
Yeah, it's really difficult. And, of course, we're talking about the fact that Thames Water is on the verge of collapse, effectively. What does that mean? The government are going to have to step in, I imagine. Caroline has said, Bev, you hit the nail on the head. Thank you. Every reservoir I've ever passed has been beautiful, whether it's been here in the UK or while I lived in New Zealand. And somebody else saying, good point, reservoirs are both essential yet also beautiful to look at. The water often has that gorgeous dark blue look and is shimmery in the sunshine. Exactly.
And, of course, the point we're making about this is the water companies have failed to build reservoirs, but partly, of course, because local MPs, local councillors say, oh, we really want a reservoir, but we don't want the disruption in our backyard, which is why there's been no new reservoir built in the South East, which is currently having a hosepipe ban since the 1970s.
Make a little swimming area. Can you swim in a reservoir? You normally can't swim in a reservoir.
I don't think that would stop kids, would it?
Well, no, you're right. But, I mean, normally you can't have no... But if you know, a bit of forward planning, you could absolutely create a swimming area within a water park with your reservoirs, with your nice little cafe at the side. There should be one in every town, frankly, but it's expensive.
They really should. Now, coming up, we're talking about food banks. You've seen them probably in just about every town and city. The Trussell Trust has found 14% of people across the country are now using food banks because they didn't have enough money to go to the supermarket.
That equates to about 11 million people. The charity warns of knock-on implications, including worrying levels of social isolation, spiralling debt and a decline in physical and mental health.
Our national reporter Paul Hawkins joins us for more. Paul, morning.
Yeah, morning to both of you. Yeah, look, the Trussell Trust warning that food bank use increasing massively, 37% year on year in terms of who's using their network. They've got 1,200 food banks across the UK. But we thought we'd come to a small independent one to get a flavour of just how desperate the situation is for some people, and also a lot of the positivity that's going on at the food banks, not just with giving out food, but also a range of things, a range of services that are offered to the clients that use these food banks. The ever-number growing list of clients. So we're at the Dad's House charity. They've got 2 branches in London. We're at the one in West London, in West Brompton near Earls Court. And we can speak to Billy, who's the founder of Dad's House, which was set up, Billy, for single dads and to help single dads 10 years ago, but you've kind of morphed into a community charity now.
Yeah, we set Dad's House up in 2008. The food bank has been running for 10 years, so I set it up for single dads, and not one dad turned up. It was just mums, so it became a community food bank overnight, and honestly, it was absolutely amazing. So from there, we've just grown, and we've helped over 60,000 families in the last 3.5 years. Yeah. From the 23rd of March 2020, you know.
And the Trussell Trust is saying there's been a huge increase in the need for food banks because of the rising cost of living, because of the dire financial situation that a lot of people find themselves in. Have you experienced that here?
Yeah, absolutely. Food insecurity, especially if you're on universal credit or a low wage, you know, is I think it's 1 in 7. Who actually experiences food insecurity and use food banks as well, you know. So we see a whole range of different clients who are working on universal credit or PIP, you know, and we're getting more referrals from schools and doctors, but we can't keep up, you know, and the demand is soaring. With the cost of living, with gas and electric, you know, and the people who used to donate to Dad's House, I know they can't afford it anymore. Yeah. You know,
the government says it's giving record financial assistance to households, £3,300 per household. When you hear that, do you think, yeah, fair enough, or do you think, no, they could do more?
No, I think it's brilliant, but that's a number that our clients don't get. You know, I can assure you our clients don't get £3,000 from the government. Some of our clients are on £5,000 a year, you know, £100 a week, and they can't afford to live on that. You know, with the rate of universal credit for a single woman or a single man is, I think it's £78, and then you've got family who have got children and need to buy food and clothes for the kids.
And can they work? Do they want to work? Because I know a lot of people will be watching this and thinking, well, why aren't they working?
I know, absolutely, you know, and I think it's a fallacy when people say who are using food banks that they don't want to work.
Yeah.
That's not true. We've got families who are working, who
and it's just
are using
and they still can't earn enough.
No, not at all. You know, and I think after COVID, the cost of living is affecting everyone. You know, and I've never seen anything like it. Our clients are really anxious about tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, and they're struggling to get by on a daily basis.
Yeah. So it's not just the food here. I see you've got set up. You've got delivery coming. Is that right?
Yeah, we've got brilliant partners, you know, and we get fresh food, lots of beautiful vegetables.
Yeah, we've got some cherries here, some tomatoes, bananas.
Yeah, everybody likes a banana.
Yeah.
And I think what we do in Dad's house as well, it's about the community. We've got lunch clubs, you know, we've got cooking classes. And it's a matter of getting everyone together and talking.
And you've got, and this afternoon you've got a legal clinic as well, because you offer pro bono legal advice, don't you, for dads?
Yeah, for mums and dads.
Mums and dads, those that are getting stuck in the family courts, which we know are bunged up, and we know there's very little legal assistance.
Yeah, well, Dad's house is very unusual, and we've got the best family law clinic in Europe, you know, and that's led by Simon Bruce, Simon Miller, Varian Exelby, William Hogg, and we've got Coram Chambers, Hudson Brewer. We've got the most amazing team that anyone can wish for when they're in trouble, when they're suicidal.
Yeah.
You know, men they don't know what to do, where to go when they're going through the family court, you know, and it's really important that something like Dad's house is available throughout the country. So we're lucky that we've got the most amazing team.
Yeah. Brilliant. I'll tell you what, let's speak to one of the clients who uses Dad's house. He's a friend of Dad's house, really. Leo, how are you?
Yeah, fine, thank you.
Yeah. First of all, just give us an idea of what this place means to you.
Words cannot explain, really. You with me? Although you've asked me to explain. Basically, it helps me.
Yeah.
Not just me. I'm a single person, and I come to Dad's house once a week. I've been coming for the last maybe 2.5, getting on for 3 years now.
Yeah.
And the way that you know, Billy, Luke, and his assistant, and the other people that come and help him work with him together, it's a togetherness, yeah. And basically, without, not just saying this, without Dad's house, yeah. If you go into the major superstores, the Tesco's, the Asda's, the Morrisons, yeah, I, personally speaking, I can't afford to buy the range. The essentials, maybe, and then basically that's why I come to Dad's house, because basically, you know, as you see the products that they've got here, it helps.
Yeah.
You can create a meal out of it, yeah?
Have you faced starvation yourself?
I've faced, like, been low down, where I've spoken to Billy, spoken to Luke, because I've had, you know, 2 major heart surgeries, and basically sometimes I can't get here. You know, Billy or Luke will actually, you know, phone me up, literally phone me up. I don't know if Food Bank could actually do that. Leo, are you okay? Do you need any deliveries? And they'll come down. You know, I only live about, say, 400 yards from here. They'll come, but through my illness, they've come down, they put food on my table, which I'm grateful for.
Could you get through life without it?
Without Dad's house?
Yeah.
It helps.
It helps.
Yeah, it helps, because I can't afford, with what the government gives me, yeah, I can't, by the time the gas gets paid, the electric gets paid, the water gets paid, you with me?
There's nothing left at the end.
There is nothing left.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be at £142 every 2 weeks. You know, it's hard. I'm going through an hardship, yeah. Obviously, I was in at 9 to 5, but, you know, through my illness, I can't do it
You haven't been able to work. So places like this are so essential, aren't they?
Yeah, it is.
Really good to talk to you, Leo. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Hopefully that gives you a little flavour of why these food banks are so important and essential, really, essential to helping people's lives, especially people like Leo who can't work because of ill health.
Thank you, Paul. It's a depressing state of affairs, isn't it, for a lot of people? It's really tough.
Well, where I work in Kensington, there's a food bank.
Yeah.
I mean, they are everywhere now.
Yeah, they really are.
It's a sign of the times, and it's community action, isn't it? People doing their bit.
Yeah. Thank you for your messages, by the way, this morning. We've been talking about climate change earlier, about the fact that the Climate Change Committee are very cross with the government because they say they're not doing enough. Anthony has said, didn't Nick Clegg stop our nuclear programme?
Yeah, they certainly did. And Colin from Hartlepool says, if the UK was carbon neutral today, how would that affect climate change? I would suggest zero effect when the rest of the world continues as it is. Not the rest of the world, Colin, to be fair, but when you've got countries like China ignoring all edicts, and the United States under Trump certainly did. Brazil, India pumping pollution into the stratosphere. We have got to do our bit, but I do think it's tricky when we've got a cost of living crisis. People are really struggling to pay their food bills. They've struggled to put the gas and electric on in the winter, to say we're going to take a big chunk out of your fuel bill each month
Absolutely.
for green taxes.
We all want clean waters, cleaner air. We probably do. Well, we do. Clean water. I don't want plastic in the oceans. I want more of us to use less stuff so that we are looking after our planet. But as Kathy says, you don't have to be a scientist to work out that when China are carrying on as they are, it is going to make no difference. Net zero is only about suffering. And that's what it feels like. You're being encouraged to live a smaller, colder, hungrier life.
Yeah.
Other countries aren't doing that in the same way.
Certainly not. Now, coming up, what have we got coming up?
We've got Cameron.
The Chancellor has pressed consumer watchdogs. It's the regulators, actually, over the fact firms are exploiting high inflation to boost their profits. But what's he going to do about it? We'll have Liam Halligan with us, our business and economics editor, to find out next.
That's right. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know,
All
Kate
sorts of
Moss?
rooms, apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And online, GB News.
It's 10:23. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So, rocketing mortgage rates are forcing more sellers to accept lower offers to secure a property sale, according to Zoopla.
So research shows 42%, I'm always sceptical about these figures, agreeing to discounts of 5% or more on asking price. That figure is the highest recorded since 2018.
So, Liam Halligan joins us now. How accurate do you reckon this is? 42% of people are having to reduce their prices.
I think it's quite accurate because, as I've often said to you when we've discussed house prices, the ONS numbers on house prices, the nationwide numbers, the Halifax numbers, they're actual numbers of done deals, particularly the ones from the mortgage companies, what actually happens. Zoopla, Rightmove, all the estate agents' numbers and the property websites' numbers, they're asking prices. And, of course, the estate agents like to say the asking prices are high because they want people to sell their homes and all the rest of it. They want to get high commissions. So the estate agents' numbers haven't shown falling house prices for a long time, but because the more official numbers, the mortgage companies' numbers and the official ONS numbers have been showing house price falls, basically the estate agents are capitulating. They don't want to look completely stupid. Yes, the market is falling. And why is the market falling? Because 70% of homes are bought with a mortgage, and mortgage finance is so much more expensive, people can't afford to bid as much.
But shouldn't we cheer this in some respects? Because we know people under the age of 35 now, people in their 30s, still living at home, still relying on the bank of mum and dad. We want to get more young people on the housing market. Liam, you and I are part of that Thatcher-owning property democracy. I owned my first house, a little tiny terrace in Worcester, when I was 19.
When you were 19?
Yeah, and it cost me £19,000.
If you take the numbers between people between 25 and 34, right? Back in the early 90s, when you and I were young property...
Actually, I was 22.
Yeah, when the likes of you and I were not Bev, she's a lot younger than us.
She is.
When I had to say that, otherwise she'd have had a go at me.
Yes. And she looks a lot younger too. Took you a lot younger than you. Took you a lot younger than you.
Back in the early 90s, between 25 and 34-year-olds... 65% owned their own home.
Yeah.
It's now 37%.
Staggering change.
Right? So well over half of a generation at that crucial family-forming age are locked out of home ownership because of unaffordability. And this is why. Just let me show you these, because these are amazing numbers.
Oh, have you got some figures?
I tried to make numbers.
Oh, good.
You got a little graph?
And amazing. I've got a little graphic here.
You build these graphs yourself, because you do like them, don't you?
I do like them. Let's have a look at this first graphic here, because what we've got here is something called the 2-year gilt yield. What is that? That's the price that the government must pay to borrow money for 2 years on the money markets.
Right.
And these you've got the Bank of England base rates, the gilt yield base rates, and mortgage costs are always set off these, so they're higher. They're always a little bit higher than the rate at which the government can borrow money. So there's the 2-year gilt yield. Back in August 2022, not even a year ago, 1.67%. Look at how high it's gone since then. By February the 1st, it was 3.16. By June the 1st, earlier this month, it was 4.27. What is it now? Today?
Over 5.
5.27.
So that's 5.3 effectively.
That is well higher than during the mini-budget. This is why...
Which brought down Liz Truss.
This is why mortgage costs are going up, because the rate at which the government borrows money is the benchmark for all other interest rates in the economy, because the government is, by definition, the most able creditor, so they get the cheapest money. So these numbers are really, really high now, and this is why asking prices on homes are going down, because those 70% of home purchases which are done with a mortgage means that people can't afford a bigger loan. They can't afford to service a bigger loan at these much higher interest rates.
We had Manchester Mayor, Labour Mayor Andy Burnham on our show yesterday, and he was at the housing festival that you were at in Manchester. Exactly.
Good man,
guy.
isn't he?
We like him a lot. And I said to him, Because he said people are just now not buying their own houses. But I said to him, are you happy with that as a vision of the future? Because I'm really confused about whether Labour just think, well, it's OK, 2030, you will own nothing, you will be happy. Isn't it that we're just going to be a rental and hiring society?
OK,
and he said he wasn't happy with it.
OK, what's happening is, and I talked to Andy a lot yesterday, and I've talked to Lisa Nandy a lot, and she's been out and about today. She's going to be at the same housing
She's a shadow levelling up secretary, isn't she?
I gave a speech at the same conference talking about exactly this. What's happening is that the Labour Party, they know that there's kind of Middle England, they want to own homes, they want their kids to own homes. Of course, it applies in other parts of the UK as well, but I just used that as a phrase. And they know that they need to take those people with them. And so they're not going to completely diss home ownership. But Labour are also coming round to the reality, and Andy Burnham is helping to steer them there, that what really counts in the red wall, where this election will be won and lost, is council housing.
Oh,
right? It's social housing.
Yeah.
Now, back in 1979, a third of all households were in homes, flats, houses owned by the state.
Yeah, I was in one.
Right?
I brought
Indeed.
up one.
It's now 17%. It's much fewer. We've had most years in our adult lifetimes. We've demolished more council houses than we've built, by the way, since the early 80s.
That's all the tower blocks.
That's why the number of council houses have gone down. And Labour knows that what a lot of people want is if they're in a council house, they want to be sure that their kid's going to get in a council house too. And, you know, I'm a broadly free market guy, but I absolutely accept the case, and I'm trying to promote, as I did in my book, Home Truths, the case for when people are in jobs where their income just isn't enough to rent on the open market or buy on the open market these days. For instance, if you're a security guard, if you're a postman, right, if you're a milkman, maybe even if you're a skilled tradesman.
Supermarket checkout.
A building labourer. Yeah, these are all really important jobs.
Yeah.
These people are valid, completely decent people who want to get up, be dignified and go to work. But on the open market, they're going to get monstered, right? They just haven't got the cash in most parts of the country. So we need to provide housing for them. Now, at the moment, what's been happening, as council housing has diminished a lot, partly for ideological reasons, under both Thatcher Major and Brown Blair. Under Brown Blair, almost no council houses were built. What's been happening is that vulnerable people, because the state has a legal obligation to house them, they've been housing them in private rental accommodation,
and paying a
often
fortune.
substandard, paying a fortune in housing benefit. Now, the housing benefit bill, it's almost £30 billion a year.
It's out of control completely.
It's out of control.
The housing benefit bill is
between 25 and 30 billion pounds a year.
And that's going to get higher, Liam.
Absolutely huge. That's about 4p on basic rate of income tax.
And that's going to get higher because landlords are going to put up the rent because their mortgages have gone up.
And it's going to get. And also, a lot of these people who are in homes on housing benefits, so they're on subsidised rent, often, with the housing benefit cap, the housing benefit doesn't meet the rent, right?
No.
So there's proper poverty there, right? And then the landlords have huge power. A lot of social landlords are excellent, right? There are lots of housing associations that are excellent. I met leaders of many housing associations in Manchester yesterday. But there are some rapacious landlords in the social sector because they know the local authorities and the government don't want to go there inspecting them because they've got nowhere else to put the people. And these people are going to end up in housing benefit accommodation their whole lives because they haven't got anything to sell.
We shouldn't forget the scandal in Rochdale, the Rochdale Housing Association, where that little boy, 2-year-old boy, died, didn't he? Because of
the reality is a lot of social housing is substandard. You've got mould, you've got bad ventilation, you've got sickness. And something that came out yesterday, housing is kind of the everything problem, right? If you want to tackle knife crime, give people a decent place to live. If you want to tackle kids not doing well at school, give them a kitchen with a table in it where their mum, often single mum, can watch them do their homework and encourage them.
If you want families to stay together,
give them their own front door.
Give them a space.
Exactly.
It underpins so much, doesn't it?
Fascinating.
Gets neglected.
As always.
We neglect you as well sometimes, Liam. Can I just say we got our matching glasses on again today?
And Liam, we do like your graphs.
Did you know?
They're actually mine because you nicked my glasses and you didn't give them back to me. They are my glasses.
He's actually right.
Swap back?
We established one day that we wear the same glasses from Boots.
And then she literally stole the glasses off my face.
Do you
what's going on there.
Do you share any other things
He's right.
that you need to tell us about?
No.
You sure?
Right, we've got to move on.
Why are you blushing?
Anyway, off you go, Liam.
He's blushing.
Right, still to come. There was a ruling yesterday, of course, from the coroner that Nicola Bulley died by accident. The family have hit out at the online trolls who engaged in wild speculation. We're going to be talking about that after your news with Tamsin.
Bev, thanks very much. Here are the headlines at 10:32. Ofcom will launch an investigation into BT after it took nearly 3 hours to alert the government there was a problem with a 999 emergency phone service at the weekend. A spokesperson for the communications regulator says in a statement, "Our investigation will seek to establish whether BT has failed to comply with its regulatory obligations." 6 teenage boys are due to appear in court charged with the murder of a 14-year-old. Gordon Galt died in hospital of stab wounds days after he was attacked in the Ellswick area of Newcastle last year. 6 boys, all aged 16 and 17, will appear at the North Tyneside Magistrates Court. The Chancellor has pressed consumer watchdogs over concerns that firms are exploiting high inflation to boost their profits. Jeremy Hunt met with the Competition and Markets Authority and the regulators for the energy, water and communications sectors to question them on what powers they can use to help lower prices for customers. The meeting comes after the Bank of England suggested some retailers are hiking prices or failing to pass on lower costs to consumers. The government is reportedly drawing up contingency plans for the emergency nationalisation of Thames Water. It's after it's feared the company is £14 billion in debt. Ministers are said to be in talks about bringing the company into public hands under a so-called special administration regime. The discussions are understood to be at a very early stage and the plans may not need to be put in place. Around 4 in 10 house sellers are having to shave more than 5% off the original asking price to achieve a sale. It's after the Bank of England raised the interest rate last week, piling pressure on mortgage holders. Property website Zoopla says the number of homeowners dropping their price in June is the highest it's recorded since 2018. Well, you can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.271 and €1.1608. The price of gold is £1,502 and 88 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 7,488 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 10:38. You're in Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Thank you for joining us. So, of course, it was a story that we were all gripped by, wasn't it? The family of Nicola Bulley, they hit out yesterday at online trolls who engaged in wild speculation. This is after the coroner ruled that the mother of two died by accident.
A disappointment, fact, prompted frenzied speculation, multiple conspiracy theories which are still circulating online. Why do people do it?
Yeah,
if the family weren't going through enough.
Retired senior officer with Sussex Police and ex-police crime commissioner Martin Underhill, MBE, joins us now. Good morning. Martin,
Good morning,
thank you very much for joining us. In some ways, this conclusion that Nicola fell somehow into the water, that she was alive when she fell in, will it bring any sort of peace to the family, do you think? Because it does seem like quite a simple case of an accident.
Yes, good morning. I think it will give closure to the family, even though it was an awful tragedy. The biggest issue, I think, is that this story didn't have to become as big as it was if the police had managed this case better. But it is good to have the closure, and picking up on Andrew's point, these conspiracy theories hopefully will now stop after the result of the inquest.
Is there anything that people can speculate to their heart's content, but much of it was deeply offensive to the family who were struggling to cope with their fact mum had gone missing, a wife had gone missing. What can the police do about it?
Well, to be honest, Andrew, the police need to do a better job. If you do the helicopter overview, the reason that this case became notorious for over 1 billion TikTok and Facebook and various other social media platform comments is because the police didn't do their job properly. They should have had a really strong media strategy right from the outset. Their media approach to this case was absolutely appalling. And I'm really glad that the College of Policing, which is the professional arm of policing, is doing a review and publishing its report in 12 weeks, because Policing UK needs to learn from this case. By leaving a void, by having a poor media strategy, they went 7 days without a press conference, don't forget. They opened the floodgates to what is horrific in two ways. One was that they let the public just take over, and we had the armchair detectives and the TikTok detectives actually trampling all over the scene. But they also led to so much conjecture as to what happened. And then, of course, we went to the famous victim shaming that they did at the end when they released personal details of Nicola that the inquest actually quite categorically shows was unnecessary and must have caused massive distress to the family.
This was when there was a reference from the police to the fact that she may have had some issues over alcohol.
And menopause, the detail of menopause was outrageous.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've been in policing 47 years. This is the worst handled media case in policing I've ever seen. If you're going to release details of alcohol problems and menopausal problems, arguably why are either relevant in this case. But if you were going to do it, you should have done it at the beginning, not 3 weeks into the inquiry. They've set a precedent for policing UK that's deeply worrying. And I hope the College of Policing's new guidelines that will come out of this case will prevent another poor subjective decision by a senior officer making a really flawed decision to tell the world that this person had issues, which actually in the inquest in the last 2 days we've heard were nothing to do with Nicola's death. This was a tragic accident, but she'll always be remembered as the person who had drink problems and was going through the menopause.
Yeah, it's
every woman in the world's going through the menopause. I mean, it's just unprofessional, very unfair, and it's tarnished the case and it's tarnished policing.
And the inquest made the point, didn't it, Martin, that actually she hadn't had a drop to drink, because when they did the post-mortem, there was nothing to do with alcohol. She slipped when she was trying to put, we think, the lead on the dog.
Exactly. And although, going back to your first point, this tragic accident, now that we've established this, will be closure for the family and the poor children and the partner and the family extended. But this whole case has become notorious for all the wrong reasons, and I have to say that those reasons lay very firmly at the foot of Lancashire Police. The public did what they were asked to do. They weren't controlled because the police got their media strategy wrong. And don't forget, I've done a couple of interviews today. It's really easy to criticise the public for being armchair detectives or TikTok detectives, but actually we live in a democracy, and most murders and most missing children are solved by the public.
Yeah.
So you can't change things for one case. We always ask the public to help. Child Rescue Alert, with Sarah Payne, all of the big cases and the alarm systems we use is because the public solve crime. If you abuse that and have a really poor media strategy, then we end up with this unprecedented social media deluge, which is still going on. And I just worry about the next case that happens, the next Nicola Bulley. How is policing going to draw that back?
Yeah, it's a very good point. Martin, great to talk to you. Martin Underhill, MBE. There. It's about trust, isn't it? The problem is, especially during the pandemic, a lot of people lost trust with the media and positions of authority and those who were meant to be in control.
And with the police too, of course.
Yeah.
But this social media thing, we've got our panel with us, Stephen Pound, of course, and Emma Webb. The media, the torrent of abuse the McCanns had, for instance, over missing Madeleine was unbelievable and continues to this day.
It's become a kind of phenomena of people online trying to solve crimes, and it's almost a kind of
it's
a movement of its own.
It's literally a job for some people. But this is how they make their money, being paid.
But in this case, the police really didn't help. By, like you say, I think the most sort of grievous aspect of this is them revealing private information about her relating to alcohol, misuse, and the menopause, in a way that almost looked as if they were trying to deflect from their own failures.
It's not our fault if we can't find her, because nudge, nudge, maybe she took her own life.
Exactly.
Because she had these issues with alcohol.
And actually, I think
menopause.
in many ways that is increased the media interest and therefore increased the likelihood of all of these people who wanted to solve the crime coming and traipsing all over the potential crimes.
I couldn't believe my ears when I heard them.
I think there's one crumb of comfort there, and I think that obviously the family need all the help they can get at this particular time, but the death was instantaneous. We now know that when she fell in, and it's a very steep cliff edge there, she fell in and the water was about 5 or 6 degrees below the point at which death can occur in freezing. So it was instantaneous. It's utterly tragic. But I think Commissioner Underhill makes a good point about the TikTok texts, because nature abhors a vacuum. And when the police didn't do anything, people flooded in to fill that vacuum. But what amazed me, and I remember very much at the time, reading about a similar case that had happened about 12 years ago, where somebody had actually fallen in virtually at the same spot, and the body had been washed downstream out towards Lytham and actually on those flats there. Do you remember where the cockle pickers were? And it seems to me that as the poor, and God rest her soul, but her body was found a mile and a half downstream. Was it impossible for them to actually think, let's go down as far as the flat and then work back up again?
Found by a couple walking their dog.
And if a couple walking a dog, can the entire Lancashire Constabulary, with all their men and women, not do the same thing?
I think
you weep for the family.
These people, they want to help. You know, they, like Bev was saying, you know, they see that the police are not doing their job properly and they think we can do something to help here. So it's coming from a good place, even though not necessarily. I mean, obviously, there were lots of people for whom there they're interested in the case wasn't coming from a good place because they were being abusive and spreading gossip. But obviously people who do want to help should be responsible when they're doing that. But when you look at all of the vast police failures, if people don't trust the police, of course they're going to want to step in and try and do the job themselves.
Talking of trust, Matt Hancock is on the front page of several newspapers today. He was giving his evidence yesterday at the COVID inquiry, Emma, and a lot of people are saying sorry is not enough. He was saying, I'm very sorry for people who died. What did you make of it?
I think all of the statements reported in today's paper from Matt Hancock are just frankly quite astonishing. His suggestion that because this part of the inquiry is looking to assess the preparedness for the pandemic, seems to be doing everything he can to just deny any responsibility for preparing for the pandemic himself.
It was that Jeremy Hunt who did the job before him.
And then to continually re-emphasise how he thinks that we should have locked down harder, how the British public should be prepared for having more of their civil liberties taken away. And as David Davis pointed out, he's suggesting this on the basis of absolutely no evidence.
None whatsoever.
And given that there are so many people, and people have been using the phrase cancer bomb to talk to refer to this time bomb of cancer patients and people who are going to die as a result of public health policies, the consequences for children that are so profound that we can't even assess them yet. And obviously these are things that we hope will come into the COVID inquiry in the future. But the fact that Matt Hancock still, on the basis of absolutely no evidence, is emphasising the need for a public health policy that wasn't founded at the time and is still not founded now, and now we know more about the negative consequences of that policy. I think he's just shown through his statements, never mind the apology, that he doesn't even really know what he's apologising for.
He doesn't. He's tone deaf. He hasn't learned anything.
He's got a tinny up, but I think shares in Matt Hancock PLC are now junk bonds. I mean, I don't think he can actually come back from this.
I want to be locked in a room with him. More than any other person on this planet, I want to be locked in a room with Matt Hancock.
I'm a little bit worried
for a conversation
about which aspect of his abilities and skills.
I think we need an intervention.
I have so many questions.
Oh, no, because his mind clearly wasn't on the job.
It wasn't on the job?
Well, he was too busy cavorting with his...
Gina Coladangelo.
Who's now his mistress's
No, look, the point is, I think Emma makes an incredible, not for the first time, makes an incredibly serious point. The long-term effects of this have not even begun to be felt. Sweden have completed their COVID inquiry. They completed it nearly 5 weeks ago.
Hearings, though.
Yeah, well, they did it right. I think, everybody said at the time, what is Sweden doing? They're taking terrible risks. Well, hindsight actually shows that Sweden was right. But the important thing here is that their office, their officials, their ministers actually have been upfront and open and honest, and they've come up with the facts. I mean, I have to say, looking at Matt Hancock yesterday, it was a sort of lachrymose production, and it was like a sort of, rather cheap melodrama, the way he was... I was waiting for him to dab the old onion on it.
Well, he learned a bit of acting, didn't he, when he was in the Celebrity Jungle? But, Emma, you mentioned the impact on children. Of course, we were talking about this yesterday. Initially, there was no plans to have any measurement of the impact on children in the COVID inquiry. Astonishing, when they were denied schooling and university, and we know the impact it's had. Well, we think we know, begin to know the impact on children's mental health.
Even just on the grounds of basic common sense, you would recognise that these sorts of policies are going to have harmful effects. I think that, I personally have very little confidence in this inquiry.
Me too.
And even the terms of the inquiry, the sorts of things that the inquiry are looking at. As Stephen mentioned, Sweden already having finished their COVID inquiry. The whole way that we have dealt with this and the aftermath, it's all frankly rubbish. And I am putting that in as charitable terms to say that the way that this has been dealt with is rubbish. And even just going back to what you were saying about Matt Hancock's apology and this kind of melodrama, it's the Matt Hancock show, it's all about Matt Hancock. Him saying that he struggles to express his emotions when making his apology.
Well, we're not interested in that. We just want facts.
And that's exactly the point, is that when it comes to, what this inquiry looks into with respect to the long-term consequences for children, for cancer patients, for the NHS overall, because that was also one of the things that has been discussed, is the fact that the NHS didn't have enough of sort of contingency room in it, and the government needs to spend more money on it. But actually, it's about efficiency. We need to be focusing on results. We need to be focusing on doing things properly and sorting out this absolute mess, because it is a mess across the board, the way the whole thing has been dealt with. People don't want this melodrama. They don't want these sob stories about Matt Hancock's emotions. They want to be assured that this is never going to happen again.
But I think the fact, any man man who's chewed on a kangaroo's anus. You know, I mean, I have to say, you know, his credibility has hopped off long ago. And the reality is, I think we should park Hancock and actually concentrate on the real thing. You know, the future of our children, the future of preparedness, because we're going to get another pandemic at some stage.
Yes, and we need to know that this is never going to happen again.
He was also part of the Quad, which brought in these draconian restrictions and rules, and he now appears to be suggesting even more draconian next time. Well, thank God he won't be Health Secretary, because he won't be in the Cabinet, because he won't be an MP, because he's out next
He
time.
hasn't learned anything about immunology, he hasn't learned anything about virology, he hasn't learned anything about how to contain a respiratory virus, or the ludicrousy of trying to, the arrogance of thinking you can contain a respiratory virus to any meaningful extent. The fact that the average age of death was between 82 and 83, very, very sad, of course. And we don't want to, you know, discredit in any way or disrespect the people who lost their lives to COVID. But my word, that to see him, I mean, I hope he wakes up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat when the reality of what he's done dawns on him.
The reality is that there are anticipated winter deaths anyway, and we know the graph. It's constant. They were added into this figure.
Yeah.
You know, and I can only say that was mendacious.
He probably wakes up in the middle of the night thinking, how am I going to spend that £340,000 I earned in the jungle?
Oh, it's barely... I mean,
the arrogance is part of the insult.
Well, he was going to give it to charity, and I think he probably gave...
He gave £10,000.
Oh,
no, £10,000.
Yes. Well, God love him, but
yeah,
but that's
what a
one
top
job, and then the book and all of the speaking gigs he will do.
He's a Meghan Markle.
Yeah,
I was just going to say,
and don't forget his diaries, because when he comes back to the inquiry, because he'll have to come back again to talk about the impact on care homes. He told us there was going to be a protective ring around care homes. He said in his diaries the reason there was so much COVID in care homes is because the staff brought it in. My jaw dropped when I read that.
Well, hang on a second. And those patients were discharged from hospital with no preparedness whatsoever.
And he said that was under 2% of the infection rate.
I'm sorry.
But those families need to know why he didn't offer them treatments which people knew were already available in summer 2020.
But also the staff in those care homes are underpaid, overworked, and
unsung heroes.
He's like a child. He's like a child that got caught doing something wrong in the playground and just can't take responsibility.
He did get caught and he had to resign.
A despicable person.
He got caught doing something to somebody else's wife.
We haven't got an awful lot of time here, but I want to read out a couple of views of people who are congratulating GB News on winning these awards yesterday. Let me know what you two think.
We haven't mentioned them yet, have we?
Linda has said, well done, GB News, for a well-deserved award. The secret is GB News discuss what matters to the everyday public, as well as exposing those who channels won't touch. What do you think the source of our success is, Stephen?
You.
Thanks, that's what I was hoping you would say, Emma.
You! It's the people...
No mention of me. I won't take offence.
It's the people that are involved in this challenge, the people who are on a mission to actually represent the voices of Britain.
But we also engage with the people who are listening and watching. Now,
it's also unfiltered.
At home.
Exactly, that's right. Now, in the next few moments, we're going across to Downing Street, where Chancellor Jeremy Hunt is meeting this morning with the regulators, looking into claims of inflation profiteering. More to come on that next hour on Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Pretty warm and humid out there today. Some heavy rain in places. Many areas, though, staying dry. And it is going to be turning fresher and cooler by tomorrow, thanks to this cold front, which is introducing cooler conditions. Ahead of it, though, as I said, really quite warm and humid. And this weather front is also providing some heavy bursts of rain across Northern Ireland and southern Scotland in particular already. And that rain will slowly edge its way across much of Scotland into parts of Wales and northern England too. 1 or 2 heavy showers possible over northeast England and the Midlands later, but much of southern England, eastern England will be dry, and it should turn drier in Northern Ireland. Also turning fresher here as well, but certainly for many central and eastern parts, really warm, really humid. Temperatures could get to 25 Celsius. Could be some heavier downpours then this afternoon and evening over northeast England and southeast Scotland, perhaps before that rain tends to ebb away. But it is going to linger as it spreads its way into eastern parts of England, bringing some perhaps useful rain across East Anglia and the southeast. Staying warm and humid here. As things turn dry and clearer elsewhere, it will be a fresher, less humid night. A few showers coming into the northwest. We start with pretty cloudy skies then for East Anglia and the southeast tomorrow, with some outbreaks of rain. That'll only slowly pull away as we go through the day. Still a bit of uncertainty about when it will clear, but it should brighten up. Many places then seeing bright spells, but there will be a few showers during Thursday afternoon, particularly over northeast England and eastern Scotland. 1 or 2 heavy ones possible as well. But again, that fresher feel, it won't be as humid. Temperatures close to average, high teens to low 20s. Still a few heavy showers across the northeast during Thursday afternoon into the evening time, but many places becoming dry before more rain then starts to push
caution from the Atlantic during Friday. A much more changeable week this week. Rain at times, but many places seeing sunny spells this weekend with temperatures close to average.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 11 o'clock. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. Thank you for joining us.
The Chancellor has called in regulators to Downing Street this morning. He's expressing concern that people are being exploited by high inflation to boost the company's profits. So what is he going to do about it, if anything?
More mortgage mayhem on the way. Britons are having to shave 5% off their house prices, apparently, to achieve a sale. Is this your experience? Let us know. GBViews at gbnews.com.
And it's been described as the worst disruption in the NHS. Senior consultants across the country voted to join junior doctors on strike next month. 5 days junior doctors and then the consultants 2 days.
And former Hollywood actor Kevin Spacey is in court today. He's charged with 11 counts of sexual assault against 4 men between 2001 and 2008.
And if And if we're smiling a little more than usual, it's a very special morning here for us at GB News. We're celebrating 2 fantastic wins at yesterday's TRIC Awards.
That's right. The Television and Radio Industries Club is very prestigious, but it's voted for by you. Saw Nigel Farage award Best News Presenter, and our very own breakfast shows across the week and the weekends win that award also. So thank you for voting.
And congratulations to both of them.
Yeah. As always, we want to know what you think about everything we're discussing this morning. gbviews@gbnews.com is the email address. Lots more to come, but first, here's your news with Tamsin Roberts.
Bev, thank you, and good morning from the GB Newsroom at 2 minutes past 11. Ofcom has launched an investigation into BT after disruption to the 999 emergency call service at the weekend. The communications watchdog says it'll look into the incident to find out whether or not the telecoms giant failed to comply with its regulatory duties. BT, which manages the 999 phone system, apologised sincerely for the UK-wide disruption. The company took nearly 3 hours to alert the government that there was a problem. 6 teenage boys are due to appear in court charged with the murder of a 14-year-old. Gordon Galt died in hospital of stab wounds days after he was attacked in the Elswick area of Newcastle last year. 6 boys, all aged 16 and 17, will appear at the North Tyneside Magistrates Court. The Chancellor has pressed consumer watchdogs over concerns that firms are exploiting high inflation to boost their profits. Jeremy Hunt met with the Competition and Markets Authority and the regulators for the energy, water and communications sectors to question them on what powers they can use to help lower prices for customers. The meeting comes after the Bank of England suggested some retailers are hiking prices or failing to pass on lower costs to consumers. A formal complaint of groping has been submitted against the Conservative candidate for London Mayor, Daniel Korski. TV producer Daisy Goodwin is accusing the former Downing Street aide of groping her a decade ago. Mr Korski denies the allegation, saying it's categorically untrue. He now faces a battle to stay in the race to become the Conservative candidate for London Mayor. A number of Tory MPs have paused support, including Education Minister Claire Coutinho, who says the allegation is very serious and concerning. The government is reportedly drawing up contingency plans for the emergency nationalisation of Thames Water. It's after it's feared the company is £14 billion in debt. Ministers are said to be in talks about bringing the company into public hands under a so-called special administration regime. The discussions are understood to be at a very early stage and the plans may not need to be put in place. Assistant editor of The Spectator, Cindy Yu, told GB News where the problem lies.
I think 10 years ago it was taken over by an Australian investment fund, which basically has been running it like a business, but not a business that has any competition in that area. And that, I think, is a fundamental problem. When you privatise utilities companies which don't have any competition locally, they're not trying to drive down prices because they don't have anyone to compete with. And so whatever they do is down to the regulators like Ofwat to make sure that it's all OK. And clearly Ofwat hasn't had enough teeth or hasn't had enough motivation or whatever it is.
The government says low-earning parents on universal credit will receive a boost in childcare support. Families can now receive up to £951 per month for one child and £1,630 for 2 or more children. Eligible parents entering work or increasing their hours will also receive up to 85% of their childcare costs back in advance, making it easier for them to manage upfront bills. Minister for Children Claire Coutinho says the plans will allow parents to access affordable childcare.
This is something which we know has been a real challenge for families. It's part of our wider plans. Like I said, we're making the single largest ever investment into childcare. We recognise it's really important for families. It helps parents get back to work. It helps with family finances as well. And today is the first step in that.
Boots will close 300 of its stores across Britain over the next year, despite posting stronger sales over the last quarter. The move will reduce the number of its sites to 1,900. The retail giant says staff will not be affected by the closures, with plans to redeploy affected workers. A spokesperson says it's to allow Boots to concentrate its team members where they're needed and to focus investment more acutely in individual stores. Oscar-winning actor Kevin Spacey has arrived at court to face trial over alleged sex offences against 4 men. The charges include sexual assault, indecent assault and causing a person to engage in sexual activity without consent. The 63-year-old is appearing at Southwark Crown Court for the 4-week trial and he denies all accusations. Human remains found in the Californian mountains are confirmed to be those of Julian Sands. The British actor had been missing for more than 5 months after disappearing on a hike in the Mount Baldy area. Local police confirmed his remains were found on Saturday by hikers, with a coroner later confirming them to be those of Mr Sands. He was best known for his breakout role in the 1985 romantic period A Room with a View, in which he starred alongside Helena Bonham Carter. This is GB News. More from me shortly. Now, though, back to Bev and Andrew.
Thank you for joining us. It's 11:07. You have been very busy this morning getting in touch with us. Paul has said we really enjoy watching the GB News team every day. Keep up with the old country. We're 12,000 miles away here in Australia.
Oh,
Keep
nice.
up the great work.
Yeah, lovely. What part of Australia I wonder if they're in? Sydney's my favourite.
It's all great.
It is, it is. And lots of praise coming in about the awards for Nigel Farage and our great breakfast show. Sally says, how fantastic GB News has blown the mainstream work media out of the water and how disgusting of them to show working class people how much they feel contempt for us. Congratulations again on making your fabulous shows. We love them all.
Yeah.
Woo woo.
Thank you. Abbas has said, congratulations to all of you for winning the award. You're acting as a megaphone for what ordinary people of the UK want to say. I've been watching GB News since it started and voted for you. Well done. Keep up the good work. We will try, Abbas.
I think
Thank
just
you.
about all of us think the rush to net zero in 2030 is mad.
Yeah, there's a lot of you getting in touch to say that as well.
Now, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has been meeting with consumer watchdogs and regulators over allegations of profiteering from inflation.
So the meeting comes after the Bank of England suggested that some retailers were jacking up prices, obviously, or failing to pass on lower costs to consumers.
So our GB News political editor, Darren McCaffrey, is in Westminster and can tell us the latest. Darren, morning. Are they in with him right now? And if so, who's in there?
They're not actually, Andrew. They left a little bit earlier on. In fact, we're actually expecting the Chancellor himself to leave number 11 in the next couple of minutes or so. Going to travel over to Parliament, of course. We've got Prime Minister's question time in less than an hour's time. That meeting took place a little earlier on this morning. It involved the head of Ofcom, which obviously looks at communications, Ofgem, which is looking at the energy companies, Ofwat as well, and the Competition and Markets Authority. So some of the key regulators in this country, and what the Chancellor's trying to achieve, essentially saying, is can we effectively regulate away, or can the regulators in some ways clamp down on these companies that have been raising prices across the board, not just on food, and we saw that with the supermarkets yesterday, but a whole range of things. For example, water bills, mobile phone bills. A lot of people have seen them shut up quite sharply in the last couple of months. And he's suggesting that, a bit like we heard from the Bank of England governor last week around food prices, that maybe companies are exploiting the inflation crisis to try and jack up prices more than they need to and passing those costs on to consumers. Now, we haven't got detail, and we are expecting a statement from the Treasury about what the response was, what necessarily these regulators can do. Ultimately, the end, given the fact that lots of this inflation is driven globally. Some of it is unique to Britain. What they could do could be quite limited. And we heard from the supermarket bosses yesterday, didn't we? They were in front of Parliament talking to MPs. They were insistent that they are not helping to drive up inflation, that actually they're shielding customers from these increased prices, but ultimately they're having to pay staff more to try and retain them, and that is why prices are high. And this is a really big problem, Andrew, for the government. I mean, a really, really big problem. Not least of all because Rishi Sunak has suggested he wants to get inflation halved by the end of this year. It remains stubbornly high, particularly food prices. That is eating into everyone's ability to get through a cost of living crisis. And ultimately, it is affecting the Conservative Party in the polls. There is little doubt about that. They're now 20, 25 points behind again in the polls. And frankly, if they can't get inflation down, could those poll numbers go further? I mean, they really could. It's really, really difficult stuff. And that's why the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are taking it seriously. But can these meetings achieve anything? We'll have to wait and see.
All right. Darren McCaffrey, our political editor.
Thank you, Darren.
We have our great political mind here. Charlie Rayleigh used to work for Michael Gove.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh at that, Charlie.
Yeah.
You are a great... I was going to say...
I wondered who you were talking about. Charlie, it's you. That's why you're here.
Thank you very much.
If you didn't have an interesting political mind, you wouldn't be here. You go to those other channels.
I'd be on
didn't win as many awards as we did.
And congratulations.
Yesterday, yeah.
Thank you very much.
What can be done from today? It's a bit of media management, isn't it, by the chance of trying to be seen to be proactive?
It is, but it's also on the back of last weekend, I think, last Friday, where, you know, the banks came around the table to make sure that actually the government were working with banks to make sure that people's mortgages might be protected, or you can have deferral of your mortgage payments or interest. So it's the government working with the industry rather than this state intervention, which I think Labour are slightly always too quick to call for.
They had a vote yesterday to try and make it mandatory that the banks and buildings... Well, you have to legislate that. That would take months, if not a year. Ridiculous.
It would take months, and obviously underpinning by that would be more state intervention, more taxes, because the taxpayer would have to foot the bill if something goes wrong. So it's absolutely vital that government and industry work, excuse me, hand in hand when you have these kinds of issues, and that's what's happening today.
But how can you do that? You can't make them, as Andrew says, unless you're going to change legislation, which would take forever. Otherwise, it's just theatre, isn't it? You just think, can you please be nicer to your customers? Yeah, of course we will, Jeremy Hunt. And then they go out the back door and stick another 20% on their food.
Well,
it's just a bit of an act.
I mean, government can put pressure on food companies, on energy companies, as they have done, on people that are lending mortgages, to have that impact on people's bills. So it does have an impact. But you're right. You've got to be committed, because in the long term, the economic cycle has to continue. And if you don't have these interventions, then, of course, I think supermarkets will suffer in the long term.
What I really want to talk to you about is Matt Hancock's crawling performance, where he said, I just don't know how to express my emotion. We're not interested in his emotion. We're interested in whether the government was caught napping by the pandemic, the preparedness. You've advised ministers. Why? This was all about him, wasn't it, Charlie, rather than answering the question. He did say mistakes were made, to be fair, but the takeaway from it was, I feel your pain, I'm really sorry, but I find it so hard to express how emotional I feel. Not interested, thank you.
I think the missing part here is because the inquiry is split into two. So the first part is, as you've rightly said, it's all about the preparedness before the pandemic, and then the government decisions that they took thereafter. And so Matt Hancock will have to come back to the inquiry to answer the second part. But in terms of the first, I mean, as far as I can recall, Matt Hancock was the Health Secretary since 2018.
Yeah.
So 2 years of preparedness that could have taken place, which I think was totally missed through that inquiry, particularly yesterday, where he failed to answer those very basic questions. And I think if you look at, you know, previous days where you had David Cameron and George Osborne talking about the idea that you need, obviously, a strong economy to fund a strong NHS, but there was preparation when it came to a particular influenza pandemic or flu pandemic. Operations did take place, routines took place, you know, Operation Cygnus, for example, to know what government might do and what society could do in that event. Now, it didn't have a plan in place for a COVID pandemic, because that wasn't something that had happened before in the country. It wasn't something, as Matt Hancock was saying yesterday, the government advised could happen. But nonetheless...
But you see, that's just not genuine, is it? Because it's a respiratory virus, as is flu, you know, it's an airborne virus. The parallels are very similar. And he could have defended his position to say, well, you know, a novel coronavirus was going to be transmitted in the same way as a flu virus, and therefore we were fairly well prepared. But he can't now, because it escalated into something so enormous and unscientific with his career at the centre of it, that he can't say that now. So he's just got himself into a web of lies.
Well, I think the challenge that he has now is because the difference was sort of, you know, what's asymptomatic and symptomatic. And, you know, so if you know that you've got, you know the symptoms of flu, and you can sort of know the numbers, and you know, with asymptomatic, you know, anybody could have it, you could be passing on, and therefore you just don't know how out of control a particular virus could be. But what I think he now struggles with, or will struggle with, is because of the emphasis of the failure that he put on civil servants and the World Health Organization, that he seems to rely on the idea that they were telling us that the UK was one of the best prepared. But then when it came to COVID, actually sort of turning up to meetings and sort of suggesting, no, the NHS is in a good shape, perhaps not being as open as he could have been with cabinet colleagues to say, this is actually something much bigger than I as one individual can deal with. I need more help. I need support of other government ministers, instead of sort of shutting them out, which I think we'll probably discover.
But he wanted the glory.
Well,
as we saw from his WhatsApp messages, that he was advised this would be good for his career.
Yeah, well, and of course it got him into the jungle and made him a lot of money, and he read his diaries, which also made him a lot of money.
And I think that's where families who turned their back on, physically turned their back on Matt Hancock yesterday, will feel that most, because, you know, he has made a lot of money by going to the jungle. He's brought out a book. I haven't bought it, haven't read it.
No, and he gave £10,000 of his fat fee to charity.
Exactly.
Not a lot.
Not a lot, no. And you know, I think he said he wanted to go into the jungle to talk about things like dyslexia and things, and that never really came up at all. So there is a Matt Hancock in person, or a personality Matt Hancock versus ministerial and a private
Charlie,
one.
you know what it's like in the corridors of power, and you understand the decisions that go behind these sorts of COVID inquiries. Our viewers, we took a clip of Matt Hancock yesterday being interviewed by the KC, and our viewers were outraged at the slowness, the cost,
the rows of lawyers you could see in the background.
The rows of lawyers. It enrages the public that we're spending a starting fee of £40 million on this, and it's going to last for 3 years. Why can't governments just get this sort of thing done quicker and cheaper?
Well, that's a very good question, and one that I don't have the answer. I mean, I don't have that. I wish I did, because...
You're a massive political brain, Charlie Rowley. That's
yes, that's why you're here, remember?
I mean, I think, look, what we would want to do in the UK... I mean, look, I understand that, you know, these kind of inquiries have been concluded in France already and other places in Europe, so it is slightly puzzling.
It's embarrassing.
But I think there is a will and a want to make sure that the inquiry is as thorough as it possibly is, to learn all of the lessons and all of the mistakes, maybe over and above other countries, but also to make sure that there is justice for those, not just the families of people that lost loved ones, but people that everybody that's impacted.
I don't think the will is there at all.
We need to interrupt you, Charlie, because there's some breaking news here. Those wretched people at Just Stop Oil, the latest, the Test match at Lords, they've disrupted it. They've been hurling, what have they been hurling on it? Orange powder on the pitch. They drive all of us insane, and yet we had John Gummer, the Lord Debon, the chairman of the Climate Change Committee, saying that the government should learn from the tactics of Just Stop Oil protesters, and they should make more of a nuisance themselves.
Yeah,
we can see, by the way, cricketers literally, physically removing the protesters, a job the police should be doing.
This is England cricketer Johnny Bairstow. Apparently he picked up the protester and helped him off the pitch.
Well, if he needs a kick up the what's it, we'll volunteer to help. What do you make of this?
Well, this is totally wrong, and I'm glad that the police have more powers to move people off.
And they seem to be doing it now.
And they do seem to be doing it. We've seen clips that GBNews has been running. I've seen,
we have,
which is absolutely the right approach, because ultimately, look, I care about the environment, and I think many people actually do in this country in terms of the long term. But this is the totally wrong way to go about bringing people to your cause. And by the way, you know, just the simple fact of stopping traffic, you actually cause more pollution than more you're trying
and also
to.
You disrupt people getting to their hospital appointment, going to work.
Exactly, and it's no way to endear the public to your cause. I think these people are totally reckless and irresponsible, who do need to feel the full force of the law. The police do need more powers, I think, to clear them quickly, because you are causing not only a public nuisance, you're actually going to start to irritate the public more, where you see scuffles in the street, where it actually angers the public more, and it causes the police more of a grievance in the long term.
Their smug self-righteousness.
Well, it's the entitlement, you know. I mean, how dare you just walk into an art gallery and through this, whatever it is, oil paint, orange paint over, and disrupt people's lives, disrupt people's communities, stop them getting to work, stop them getting that ambulance to them. They are just an absolute public nuisance at this moment in time.
And also,
the police
we're
need
doing
to clear
quite a lot already on climate change in this
I know,
country.
I sort of
Too
want to
much,
say to them,
in my view.
You've already won. Like, you've already won. Why are you making a fuss?
But my question, I know, but my question to anybody in Just Stop Oil is, say, have you actually sat down and written a letter to your local MP? Have you actually turned up to a meeting to try and engage with the government, to try and see what's... These people just turn up to protest because they... Exactly that entitlement that they think that they have.
Exactly. And they like the publicity, and of course, people will say, well, why are you publicising it? It's our job to report it. That's why.
Yeah.
That's the point.
And, you know, the Ashes is a big event, of course, in this country. As we were just saying, if you're just joining us, a Just Stop Oil protester went onto the pitch at the Ashes. Johnny Bairstow, cricketer, carried him off.
Good on him.
Quite. But they would have won no favours at all.
No,
it's just turning people against them.
Charlie, thanks for coming.
Rowley there, huge political brain.
Yeah.
Now, still to come. The wonderful, award-winning Ellie Costello is live from the poshest event on the calendar, but it's still, despite that, it's still quite close to my heart. Henley Regatta is back this week. We're going to be there for some beautiful pictures in just a moment. First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel. Britain's news.
Welcome back. It's 11:24. Just to remind you, breaking news just before the break. The second Ashes test at Lord's has been disrupted by Just Stop Oil again. They threw orange powder onto the pitch.
Well, good for the England cricketer Johnny Bairstow. I think he might be the wicketkeeper. He literally picked up the protester, how diplomatically use this phrase, to help him off the pitch, and the match has resumed. Great photographs, if you're listening on the radio, of Bairstow. Literally, he's got this ridiculous protester, aged about 14, under his arm and dumped him on the outside. And they just haven't a clue how much this alienates public opinion, how much it turns people off. And while it is a noble cause, apparently, they should look at what the government's already doing. They ain't paying their taxes. They're not paying their energy bills, babe, which have a huge green levy every single month.
The idea that they've got a right to just go and disrupt everybody's day like that and just...
Yeah, so we'll keep you up to date on that, and let's hope no more are going to do it.
Right, we're going to some beautiful pictures now. Henley Royal Regatta is back this week.
It's the annual rowing event. It's been taking place for almost 200 years, and our Ellie Costello, award-winning Ellie Costello, she's mingling with the glamorous, the gorgeous, and
the very handsome crowds. Now,
Yeah.
Ellie Costello, I'll be there at Henley Regatta on Friday. Should we just have a moment, you and I, just to discuss how gorgeous it is to walk around 6'6" men with their lycra rolled down to their waist?
She's pretending she hadn't noticed. She's pretending she hadn't noticed.
Oh, let me just bring you this, because talking of 6'6" men, this could be... Oh, no, it's a women's team. There you go, I spoke too soon. It's a women's team that's coming out now. Let's take this for you live. This is Newcastle University. They've just come out of the boat sheds there. They were having a meeting at the back. Their cox was probably giving them some words of encouragement there. And now they are heading onto the jetty just in front of us here, if you are listening on the radio. And they are going to launch from here. So some spectacular scenes here this morning at Henley Royal Regatta. I'm sure you heard that huge round of applause, that warm welcome for these ladies. They are just about to get in their boat now, looking very smart, all of them, in their white and blue rowing kits. And from here, they will launch and head towards the start line on the River Thames. I'm not actually sure who they're going to be racing against this morning, but they look very cool, calm and collected. So good for them. But I know you're just talking about the Just Stop Oil protesters at Lord's. So I thought I'd bring you up to speed with the Aussies and how they're doing here at Henley, because it's not just British teams. This is Newcastle University, of course, but there's teams from all over the world. They've come from New Zealand, they've come from the United States, places like that. The Aussies, so far, a bit of a mixed bag. Imagine this, Melbourne University. They have flown in from Melbourne, of course, in Australia, over to Henley-on-Thames. They were disqualified after rowing just 200 metres. Apparently, they kind of went a bit skew-whiffed. They went too far over. And that's quite difficult because it is quite windy today here at Henley. And they were disqualified after just 200 metres. They were so disappointed, that team. That's just happened in the last few minutes. But here we can see that those races continue. There'll be 300 races over the next few days. It started yesterday, continues until Sunday. Bev, you're here on Friday. There's so much to look forward to, because it's not just about the racing, is it? It's about the spectacular... Oh, they're very popular, this team. You can see, I was just about to say, it's not just about the racing, it's about the fashion. Some fantastic blazers here. You can see the ivory and the blue with this team here. And wonderful hats as well. Lots of boater hats, lots of fascinators. Not quite as dramatic as the ones we saw at Ascot last week. And we'll just bid farewell to Newcastle University, who are heading off towards the start line there. And you just saw that amazing round of applause. What a send-off for those girls. So good luck to them. Good luck to all of the British teams that are going to be racing until Sunday.
Just so beautiful. In fact, my parents went posh a few years ago. They sold up in Manchester and moved to Henley-on-Thames. And in fact, one of those little houses behind you on the river, one of those was the boathouse that belonged to George Harrison from the Beatles. And he still has, his wife still lives in their huge family home in Henley. And that was the boathouse that was part of George Harrison's house. 2 doors down. You can rent it on Airbnb, and I try and do that every summer. And then I can wake up in the morning, put on GB News, and then go for a little swim in the river.
Lovely, yeah.
Anyway.
Ellie, is it your first time at Henley?
Oh, no, I was here for GB News last year,
Right.
and that was my first time at Henley, and I was desperate to come back this year. I get all the tough gigs around this time of year. I had Ascot last week, got Henley this week. Hopefully you send me to Wimbledon next week. I mean, it's a tough gig, but someone's got to do it.
Ellie, we want you to be very careful around those 6'6" men in their lycra.
Knock yourself out, Ellie.
I will. I'll stay focused.
And also, Ellie, congratulations on winning your award last night. Well done, richly deserved. You've done an amazing job on GB News Breakfast at the weekends, particularly while Anne Diamond has been off recovering from illness. You've been amazing.
Yeah, breakfast show, Nigel Farage.
Oh, thank you so much.
Well done, Ellie.
you.
Speak soon.
Yeah. Have a great time.
Exactly. You're going on Friday. So you
I'll
be
be
aware
on
of those
Friday.
6'6" men in lycra too.
I was married to one for 20 years.
Oh, well, you know what to expect.
Yeah, I do. It's not it's not all plain sailing. Right, still to come, we're going to be talking about the latest blow to the high street. This story drives me mad. 300 Boots stores, the chemists are about to close across the UK. We're going to be talking about that with Emma Webb and Stephen Pound next.
Good morning from the GB Newsroom. It's 11:31. Here are the headlines. Just Stop oil protesters have stopped the second Ashes Test match today by running onto the pitch. England wicketkeeper Johnny Bairstow took matters into his own hands by picking one of them up, attempting to throw paint on the field and then carrying them off. The other protester was taken off by security staff. Ofcom has launched an investigation into BT after disruption to the 999 emergency call service at the weekend. The communications watchdog says it'll look into the incident to find out whether or not the telecoms giant failed to comply with its regulatory duties. BT, which manages the 999 phone system, has apologised sincerely for the UK-wide disruption. The company took nearly 3 hours to alert the government that there was a problem. 6 teenage boys are due to appear in court charged with the murder of a 14-year-old. Gordon Galt died in hospital of stab wounds days after he was attacked in the Elswick area of Newcastle last year. 6 boys, all aged 16 and 17, will appear at the North Tyneside Magistrates Court today. The Chancellor has pressed consumer watchdogs over concerns that firms are exploiting high inflation to boost their profits. Jeremy Hunt met with the Competition and Markets Authority and the regulators for the energy, water and communications sectors to question them on what powers they can use to help lower prices for customers. The meeting comes after the Bank of England suggested some retailers are hiking prices or failing to pass on lower costs to consumers. The government is reportedly drawing up contingency plans for the emergency nationalisation of Thames Water. It's after it's feared the company is £14 billion in debt. Ministers are said to be in talks about bringing the company into public hands under a so-called special administration regime. The discussions are understood to be at a very early stage and plans may not need to be put in place. You can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Well, here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2698 and €1.1595. The price of gold is £1,502 and 61 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 7,503 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 11:37. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So, a GB News investigation has found that a London charity that received more than £250,000 of taxpayers' money last year has published discriminatory and extremist content on social media.
Access UK, their aim apparently is to improve opportunities for ethnic minorities, has also hosted conspiracy theorists at panel events. Charlie Peters has this exclusive report for GB News.
White people are a plague. That's a suggestion made in a video posted on social media by a London charity. Take a look.
You're obviously not aware of this, but blessed is not a word the global majority thinks of in association with Europeans. Words like plague and colonizer, maybe, but not blessed.
Access UK is supposed to help ethnic minorities get into education or employment. They were given £266,000 in government and lottery grants, according to their most recent accounts.
But when will I see you again?
But posts on their social media profiles include footage mocking conservative politicians and repeated claims that ancient Egypt was black, a conspiracy theory associated with the Hotep movement. A video posted on their YouTube channel shows their managing director, Nana Agyeman, taking part in a debate with various controversial figures. They include Raspect, a rapper and conspiracy theorist who founded a paramilitary-style group called the Forever Family Force. They've also hosted Dr. Umar Johnson, a discredited American psychologist who has opposed interracial marriage and claims that he can cure homosexuality. The Access UK website also hosts a cartoon that says black people have no power because they give money to white business people. Some MPs are now calling for the government to review grants to charities.
Well, it's very concerning to hear those reports, and of course when we're giving taxpayers money out we want to make sure it's spent correctly, but we also want to be giving it to organisations that bring the community together and actually have a positive impact on society. Going from the things I've heard, I have serious doubts as to whether that's the case here. There are numerous examples where this is going on, and government doesn't want to be giving money to these kind of groups if we know that something is seriously wrong there. So I'd urge us to look a little bit further into it, see if there's anybody else that shouldn't be receiving this kind of taxpayers' money, and ultimately doing something about it.
Despite claiming to be run by volunteers, Access UK claims to have spent over £182,000 on volunteer allowances. Managing Director Nana Agyeman also appears to be a trustee of the charity, under the name Nana Yor Agyeman, potentially breaching charity rules on conflicts of interest. Mr. Agyeman is also a director of the campaigning group Black Child Agenda, which was recently exposed by The Times as having published misleading adverts which encouraged people to apply for the Windrush compensation scheme, despite not being eligible. A Charity Commission spokesperson said, "We are currently assessing information following concerns raised with us regarding trustee payments at Access UK. This will determine our next steps." Regarding the Plague Instagram post, Access UK Director Nana Aguman said, "We do not condone or tolerate any form of racism or discrimination within our organisation, and that Access UK serves a cross-section of beneficiaries from diverse backgrounds." Aguman did not respond to our other questions. Charlie Peters, GB News, Tottenham.
Well, another excellent story by Charlie, and really disturbing. So let's hope they do look into it and do something about it. Don't you think, Stephen Pounds, with us?
Well, I mean, fair play to Charlie and GB News. This is a really, really good story that needs to be brought up. Look, there's a certain sort of whinging, cringing, liberal guilt when you see, if you just see any organisation which appeals to a particular ethnic group, they think, let's shovel some money at it. And the idea behind that is it gains you some sort of reverse credibility. Now, I've been there in councils where we've been looking at giving grants, and the number of times that we do no due diligence whatsoever. But we simply just want to tick that box. Have we given any money to such and such a group? Yes, we have. It's miserable, it's distressing, and I have to say, Charlie Peters deserves to have some press award if there's any left that you haven't already won.
And it's also the fact, Emma, that the impact of these stories, the impact of these events, is that it does mean that we get resentment and we get discrimination where there doesn't need to be any, in a way. You know what I mean? Like the backlash against these sorts of events affects the people who might need support.
You know, this actually used to be my old beat, looking into taxpayer money going to charities that were doing all sorts of things that probably charities shouldn't be doing. And all I can say is that this sort of thing has been going on for a very long time, and they haven't managed to get a hold on it at all. Clearly they haven't. And I think what was interesting about that final statement there, saying that the charity stands against all forms of racism. Now, of course, we know that the postmodern definition of racism now is that it's power plus privilege, and so white people can't be victims of racism. And so probably many people would see that video calling white people a plague and would say, well, that's not racism at all, because white people can't be victims of racism. So there are all of these sort of Weasley ways out of it. I think that people will see this, and they will, again, you know, you was talking earlier about the sort of lack of trust. There's a general lack of trust in the system because, as I say, this has been going on for such a long time. Taxpayer money has been going through gift aid to extremist charities and other organisations that it shouldn't be for many, many years, and they haven't put a plug on it.
And you think what £270,000 would pay for 10 trainee nurses' salaries?
No,
it's got.
It does worry me that this big business about not giving money to white businesses. You know, I've been in New York when there's been campaigns against Jewish businessmen and Korean businessmen. That people say it's not just give money to non-black companies. It's actually very often a sort of rather unpleasant, particularly anti-Semitic racism comes in about shopkeepers. And this is a nasty, dangerous thing. And the fact that we are paying for it, that sticks in my gullet.
Me too. Right, a very popular British brand, Boots the Chemist. We all love it. I think it's safe to say, I certainly do. It's owned by an American company, Emma, Walmart, and because it's not working for Walmart, they're going to close 300 Boots Chemist high street shops. This is a massive story.
And it's going to be focusing on local pharmacies as well. So in many places, they probably won't have anything other than a Boots. And I don't know whether that's something that they'll look into, making sure that they don't leave certain communities without a pharmacy or without
And it's a very important point you're raising, Em, to interrupt you, because the government's part of their health strategy is to put more the pharmacies to take over more responsibilities from GPs.
Precisely. So this could really leave certain communities up a certain creek. And we're already seeing this with dentists as well, people not able to get access to dentists. So, you know, it's really important, other than the fact that I, like you, Bev, I love Boots, I shop in Boots, and I think we see so many chains now that, you know, chains have got certain monopoly across the country. When a chain goes down, people don't know where to shop, they don't know where to go to for the alternative, and our high streets have been absolutely decimated by online shopping.
They have.
So
Boots is an anchor business. I never saw you as the public face of Boots #7, but I mean, now it makes sense. Look, the real tragedy is Boots was Jesse Boot from Nottingham. It's a sort of local company. And we all, actually, I'm probably the only one who does remember those great coloured carboys of liquid that they used to have in the shop. But the thing is, that old Boots has gone. Nowadays, you go into Boots in Greenford, where I am, and you can there's an optician's down there. You know, there's smoking cessation advice, there's obesity advice. It's a totally different thing. Now, what really worries me, and I think absolutely you've nailed it, on the one hand, the government is saying that community pharmacists, another third leg of the NHS, primary care, tertiary care, and community pharmacy. Where's the joined-up thinking?
There's no joined-up thinking. And Boots are making an awful lot of money. And I think retailers have a social responsibility. And this is, as Emma said, it's going to be devastating.
But it's going to be
The
like
high
Woolworths.
streets.
Woolworths, Marks and Spencer. There's a few people who are anchor businesses.
Yeah.
And Boots are definitely one of those. I mean, in Greenford, where I'm from, you can actually see Boots is painted on the wall because it's been there for so long.
Yeah.
That lovely signature up there.
Yeah.
Please
It's
keep.
an institution.
Yeah. And how many times did you use that little Boots outside the Houses of Parliament?
Well, like we all did, frequently. I won't
Without
say...
giving us any medical details, Stephen, that you don't want to
Well,
reveal.
a number of my colleagues procured a certain medication
Stop
on a
it,
regular
Stephen.
basis.
You will behave yourself.
A razor.
Lemsip.
Yeah, there you
that's
go.
The one. That's
yeah,
the one.
I think it's a terrible... I mean, the thing is, in Boots, it's actually, as you say, Andrew, it's a profitable business. They've had a 13% rise in quarterly turnover recently.
I know.
The British public love Boots, but it's because it's an American company. It's not working for them.
And you often hear
Walmart.
foreign tourists in Boots talking to the pharmacist. It's in
But don't
big
Walmart
cities.
have a rival? Is it Walgreen or something? I think they have their own pharmacy.
Yeah.
Could this be what's behind it?
It's not a good look for them not showing much interest in the communities where they have their
No,
shops.
I quite agree. Really bad.
No.
These boots are made for walking.
Yeah, well, this is the problem. And the impact of this on communities, on high streets, as you say, absolutely enormous. We've run out of time,
We have,
guys.
sadly.
There wasn't enough time to talk to you. Never enough time. It's Prime Minister's question. So apparently it's important, but I'd rather talk to you, Steve.
But there's a lovely story about NCOs wearing catsuit onesies, having a mass punch-up down in Bulford when they came back from the Falkland Islands. If only we could talk about the serious
I'm
issues.
so glad you mentioned it, Stephen, because now I get to mention what I was going to say, which is that I just had the great pleasure of seeing a photograph of Stephen dressed as a cheeky girl.
Yeah, but
apparently he's
I
worn
wasn't
catsuits
wearing a
before
cat
too.
onesie.
We will save that for next week.
No, the
Do
world.
tune in.
Emma's going to bring it to us next time.
No.
Right, we've come to the end of the show, unfortunately. Coming up next is The Live Desk with Mark Longhurst and Pip Thompson. Of course, it's PMQs. We'll be back with Britain's Newsroom tomorrow at 9:30.
See you then.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday.